Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my vlog, where it's my pleasure to highlight my creative journey, both in hopes of inspiring you, but as well as give you practical tips for your own journey as well. Now, before I get into all the things that I've been up to, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various episodes and lessons that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and truly thank you if you already were. It means a lot to me. So let's get into it. This past week, one of the biggest things was the fact that I held a virtual table read for In Search of Sunrise, which is a script that I wrote that I intend as shooting as my second feature film. And this the table read was Thursday. And I had essentially finished the script in terms of all minor edits and so forth and adjustments on Sunday. And the anticipation of waiting till Thursday, quite honestly, was hell. I was like, what do I do? Because it's not like I could really start something new. Nor did I want to go back and really work on this. Not because it wasn't enjoyable, but because it's like I needed some distance away from the work, because it's like I can make minor adjustments to make it slightly better, but I was never going to be able to see the seismic shifts towards the thing that really would, take it from, let's say, good to great. So that was kind of, interesting to say the least, but I occupied my time with, I'll talk about working on stuff for Idol, right? My first feature film, there's things that still needed to happen with that in terms of the next phase. And I'm going to talk about those, right? I'm going to kind of hold off on that in a moment. But so let's just kind of cut to Thursday, the table read. Excellent table read. One of my worries going into it initially was I was like, shit, this script is 23,500 words. That's a lot of words for a script. It's only 116 pages, but that's a lot of words for a script because, a lot of it's action and so forth, and so it's written out. So I was like, shit. So, and even like at its best, a page of script usually equals a minute. And so 116 pages, about 2 hours. Plus, I knew we weren't going to start right at time, because we're going to wait for people. Plus, I would have to give an explanation and so forth. So, all in all, though, we got started pretty early at 7:15. We aimed to, we started the Zoom call at 7. And then by 7:15, we were all kind of settled in. Everyone's given their parts and, went for it. And it was a very interesting experience. And, part of the reason why I wanted to be a Zoom was so I could see people's reactions in the moment. But I think eventually people, without disrespect to the work, I don't think that's why they did it, but they just started turning off their cameras and their mics. The mics I understand because if they're not speaking, then it's like, why have your mic on if you're not in a particular scene? And everyone that participated had a role, albeit some had main roles, others had a scene here and there. But I would have been very curious to see them on camera. But am I upset that they took off their cameras? No. But and this went long. We by the time we finished the script, it was about 10 o'clock. So 2.5 hours worth of a read. And some of that was just because of, technical glitches at some points. We had to wait for somebody's internet connection to come back because, it was right? It was choppy. Other times, people forgot to unmute themselves at certain points. And so it's the standard stuff you deal with on a Zoom call. But 2.5 hours, right? So not bad. And so in the back of my head, I'm like, and I don't, and for me, I had such dread already in the sense I knew I wrote something that people would like. What you never know is, will these people like it? And will these people like it on a Thursday night, kind of, a few days before the election, in the middle of a pandemic, when we're going already later, and then, at the end, I'm going to be asking questions. And what was really fantastic for me, because by the end, I don't know, I felt so like, not defeated by it, but it was like, I was like, because I saw myself in terms of the shortcomings of the script, and I was like, and for them, it's like, is this like 10 times worse? But luckily, they saw the golden nugget of something beautiful, and they gave me fantastic notes. Now, does that mean I'm going to chase every single note? No, it does not. And I think at its core, they were also saying, like, they would kind of compare it to Inception. And ultimately, my goal is not to make Inception. Not in the sense of, I think number one, Inception is an action-based movie. Mine's not. It's a lot more kind of, introspection and people having arguments with each other rather than physical altercations. But also, just on the level of it, I think, as great as Inception is and as heady as it is, it's still a commercial movie. Versus, let's say, like an 8.5, which ultimately, like, if I was striving for anything, it's like that's what I'm creating. I'm not saying I'm going to succeed in that, but that's more of the barometer. So in that sense, even if like the script itself was as best as it could be, I knew that people would sort of fall off the cliff and not get every aspect because, that's what 8.5 is. It forces you to a deep introspection, and not everyone's going to get it. But nonetheless, a lot of their notes, do ask questions to help elevate the script. And, so now I wrote those things to my co-writer, Jason. And, and what I did was I said, here's all the notes from everybody compiled without judgment, without weighing, is this worthwhile? Is this not? Just here's all the notes. And then I went into, okay, as I see it, here's how we fix it. And not with the intent to fix anything because because I see it as wrong, but because it truly does elevate the work. And that's what, so I spent, after that, I couldn't sleep that Thursday night, and ideas already started popping into my head. And as I was kind of laying in bed, I kept grabbing my phone to dictate notes into it and so forth. And, really by like noon on that Friday, I had come up with a decent core of, the changes that I wanted to see that I thought could elevate it. And then over the weekend, I really thought about some more and started plugging in more of the specifics. And then, Friday, I had a great conversation with my friend John Comerford, who's an amazing script doctor. And what I love about those conversations with him and others is that idea that, they start asking you questions when you present them an idea, and it's like, okay, well, why, right? And then it forces you to have to answer that why. And so that was fantastic because that's how I got to the specifics. Now, to kind of close a loop that I started earlier, right, in terms of the people and so forth on the Zoom call, what was really appreciative, we stayed on till like 10:45 p.m. that Thursday on the Zoom call. And so you could tell people were tired, but they stayed on. And it wasn't me dragging them. They stayed on because they had something to contribute. They wanted to contribute. And so I am truly blessed to have these amazing people in my life. And I do not take that for granted. And I hope that they know, and especially if you are one of those people that is listening right now, I truly appreciate you. And however I can return the favor, that I'm here for it. Which is a whole separate thing on like, as a side tangent real quick, I just don't understand why people don't work with their friends more. Maybe it's a selfish perspective of like, it just takes time away from you, but in the long run, it doesn't. I promise. At least that's been my experience of it. The more I help others, the more they help me. It's really wonderful in that sense, and it leaves me a lot more fulfilled, to be honest with you. It's one of those things like, the people on the Zoom call, not every one of them was an actor. In fact, it wasn't like a typical cast table read. It was very much a table read just for story purposes. But some of them were actors, and the ones that were, even though they're not right for the role, in the sense like there's some roles where like it's supposed to be a 70-year-old guy or, a 60-year-old woman. My friends are in their 20s and their 30s. What got me thinking, and this is also like something that I was thinking about before, just in terms of conceptually, was what if I shot it like kind of like Scanner Darkly, where they shot live action but then rotoscoped it and animated it. Because I do love animation. I really do. Animation like Archer and Scanner Darkly are truly fantastic to me, and I don't think we have enough of it. And, I was like, well, if I kind of did that, would that allow me to put somebody in a role that isn't necessarily the perfect fit in terms of the look, but if they can deliver on the mannerisms, the voice, and the characteristics, then can we alter the visual style later? And I don't have an answer quite yet to that, but it's something that I'm exploring, and that excites me, and I would kind of love to do that. So I'm weighing the pros and cons of going live action or animation on it. But we'll see. Who knows? But I'm really excited by the end of the weekend. So yeah, I did compile all this stuff. I came up with the specifics that I think will fix everything, or the broad strokes, and I have certain specifics. And then I'm working on it. My friend Jason is now taking everything from that table read, everything that I thought of and compiled, and going to add his 2 cents to it. And I think ultimately, as much as I would love for him to just take all that and just rewrite it, because that would be the lazy nature of me, I really think I'll have to have like my pass at this kind of next draft, and then let him, do his magic in revising, like we did with the first draft. So, I think that's how we'll go about it. I'm excited to share that journey. One of the other interesting parts, I don't know how many table reads you've partaken in or note sessions on story. It's interesting. You always get back almost like a viewing list. And I almost laugh about that because, I get where it's coming from, right? We all, like, in order to give notes, kind of need to ground it or anchor it rather in some sort of thing of like, I'm thinking about this, and so like in that perspective, that's how I'm able to deliver this note, right? It gives us a context. But ultimately, nonetheless, as a byproduct, you end up with, they tell you should watch this, right? So it's like a byproduct, you get this viewing list. And so I ended up with a massive viewing list, and I kind of joked with my friend Anthony in the sense of like, it's great, but me watching movies is not going to solve and fix this script. Me getting in the nitty gritty, like I know, like I'll take the notes and I'm going to solve for the notes, but I don't need to watch movies to do that. I love watching movies, don't get me wrong, but I think that's a fallacy in some sense that artists have of like, okay, now I got to consume this, consume that. It's like, it would be great and things like that. And there's obviously things to learn and be inspired by from those movies, and I will eventually, but really that's just resistance with a capital R, as Stephen Pressfield would call it, where, I'd be putting something off when I'm at this point, I can tout myself enough of a good storyteller to, or certainly a problem solver where it's like, okay, these are the problems, so, creatively, let me work to fix those. I can do that. And if I really can't, then yes, maybe I'll revisit that and really study it, but I don't need to do that to solve that. And that's not me being arrogant, that's just, I've been doing this for 15 years at this point. So, just thought I'd share that. The other part, also too, I mean, maybe it's my kind of, right now, I'm in a place where I'd much rather read things, fiction or nonfiction, but especially fiction, I don't know, for some reason, I just, I enjoy watching stuff, but not as much as I used to. I actually derive more pleasure currently from reading than I do viewing. And so maybe that's also why I kind of have that feeling of it. Not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong, that's just figured I'd share. The other thing, so, I talked about this in the past weeks. We've been putting together 2 concept films that my friends Courtney and Morgan created, and we submitted them to a contest that was held by Film Riot. And the contest, the submissions we already submitted. And then on November 6th, we're going to find out who the top 20 people are. And those top 20 people will get essentially notes and feedback. And we can either choose to address the notes, all of them, none of them, or any number of them. So we've been kind of preparing mentally for this in anticipation that we would get it. And our friend Danielle, who directed both, her stance was, well, they're not going to make us do X, Y, and Z. And I said, well, hold on. It's a contest, right? At the end of the day, even though some of these things that you're saying, like, that it's a concept film or whatever, and that they might not make us reshoot a certain part or whatever, in like, let's say perhaps the real world, and they'll just be able to see it as is, at the end of the day, this is a competition. So, and in that sense, I almost look at it as like an interview where, they want, because the ultimate goal of this thing is they're going to take the films that they like and try to go get them made, which is awesome. And part of that is, they're forming a partnership and a deal with the filmmakers. Let's say us, right? Let's be optimistic. Yes, Chloe agrees. Us it is. Us indeed. Chloe's my dog, and that's Sparky as well. Yes, we will win this competition. Hopefully. But we're going to put that mindset. And in that sense, what I'm really talking about is this idea that, they want to see who they can work with. And part of that is how filmmakers take notes. So I said, like, even though this might not be a normal thing, they might just do it just for the sake of it, to see what we're capable of. Not to say they're going to fuck with us, but for lack of a better term, yeah, they're going to fuck with us to see how many hoops we can jump through, because that'll tell them, how adaptable and so forth we are. So I said, well, we got to be ready for everything. So, we thought of, okay, what if they want us to shoot more stuff? What if they want us to recut certain things? Okay, that also means we have to redo sound. We have to redo, coloring if that comes down to it. Perhaps we might have to get there's certain locations we can get again, and there's certain locations we can't get again. So we have to draw a line kind of somewhere, ultimately. We might have to cast another part or redo something. So we'll see, right? So we've been kind of mentally preparing because, November 6th we would get the notes, and then by November 15th is when we would have to deliver. So, and we've kind of got the various people that helped us, the colorist, the sound guy, graphics, to, be in this mind space of like, hey, if this comes down to it, are you willing to help us? Across the board, they said yes, great. So, we'll see ultimately what that means, but that's where we're at mentally. Now, the other aspect of it, because we're talking about all these competitions, one of them texted on our group chain of like, hey, I had this dream where only four films got in, and therefore, we were able to like get, spots 1 and 2, and we won and so forth. And, there was like a high-fiving, virtually in the text chain. I was like, nah, fuck that. I don't want to win because there was only 4 people. I want to win. I have a vision where 5,000 people, maybe more, submitted, and we still fucking won because the concepts kick ass and the merits of true filmmaking is right there on display. That's why I want to win. I don't want to win because not enough people submitted. And then they kind of saw that and they're like, oh yeah, you're right. And I think that's my mantra in a lot of things. Like, I'm not interested in being number one in a small pond. I want to strive for greatness through being really good. And at the end of the day, art is subjective in that sense. So there's never really a winner or a loser. But in that, there's a common kind of consensus, and from their perspective, if we are chosen in the top 20, and if we're lucky enough, and the winner slots of 1, 2, or 3, then yeah, that says like, oh, someone did validate and sees merit of this, and that's a good feeling. So yeah. So going back to things, I said when I was talking about the virtual table read that I had idle stuff to do. So before Thursday, I was working on. I have to create a dialogue list for my movie, and if you're unfamiliar, it's kind of literally what it sounds like. You take the dialogue that is in your movie and you make a list of it, and you time code it and you attribute it to what character. So it's not quite like a script because it's a little bit more mechanical than that, in the sense of, you cut out everything else, but you time code when and what things happen. And so, so rather than be like creative and start a new project, Even though it's not a creative thing, I was doing that because it's necessary, and it was like, okay, well, it'll pass the time, it'll be productive. And that part of the lesson there too is that art is not always going to be the fun aspect of it. But you know what? Seth Godin has this quote that that the amateur is seeks to do what they love, whereas the professional loves what they do. And so even though I'm doing kind of what may seem like a monotonous thing of just a dialogue list, because it's not like I'm coming up with anything, it's not necessarily creative, like I'm just filling in the equivalent of, not literally, but pretty much like an Excel sheet. It's like, okay, well, can I find the love in that? And I did. I made it fun, and so forth. And so, that's how I think we need to look at the creative process more, because there are definitely mundane parts to the entire creative process in order to get a work to completion. So that's what I have for you, and creatively, that's what's been going on. My main focus creatively is this rewrite for In Search of Sunrise, and I'll keep you abreast on that as time goes on. My aim is for 2 to 3 weeks to really give it a rewrite. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to tune in. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about, or something else entirely, by all means, ask away or comment with your own thoughts and opinions, whether down below or on social media. I'm at Svitek. Hit me up there and let's chat. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope to see you next time.